This tutorial is going to introduce a few additional form controls in Visual Basic that we haven't used up to now. The controls I'm going to use are demonstrated on this short report program. So this is a program, a completed version, that allows a tutor to put in a student report on the BTEC units they've been doing and what grades they've got. So let's have a look at the program. You enter student names. So this is a text box which we've seen before. Let's just put some name in there. Now some additional things we haven't seen. First of all, we have this tool here, this control, which allows you to select something from a list. So in this case we're selecting BTEC units. This is actually a list box, and it just allows you to select one item from the list. Second thing that's a control we haven't used is this one here, which is radio buttons. And as the name suggests, it's a bit like the buttons on top of a radio. If you click one down, you select whatever's associated with the button. The important thing with the radio buttons is you can only select one from the list. So if I've clicked merit. If I select pass, then merit is deselected. I can only click on one of those options. And if I click the button, which we've used before, you can see also on the right hand side, not only have we got the unit I've selected, but the description comes and the grade is calculated as well. On this side, on the right, you've got two list boxes as well. So it's the same control as we've got here, except in this case it's used for display. So you can use a list box to allow a user to select from a list, or you can display a list of particular items. For example, as I add and select different units from here, press add to report, you can see that the description for the unit and the grade comes on this side, and we've got a text box putting the output, and finally we've got a text box here as well. So what we're going to look at is list boxes, using those to allow you to select something, and radio buttons, so that we can show how that the user can select one particular item from a shorter list. Let's have a look at this in Visual Basic, or just have a look at the controls we've used. So first of all, I'm going to create a new project. I'm just going to call it test, or let's call it controls example. Make sure you save this in a suitable area in your own area. I always save the project first before going any further, and make sure you've selected Windows Forms application. Okay, I'm just going to make the form a bit larger. So first off, let's have a look at these radio buttons. I could use the radio buttons to actually select the units. So I could have, for example, make this radio button equal unit 1, and I could have another radio button which is going to be unit 2. Problem with this is that obviously in BTEC in 1 year you've got 9 units, so I'd have to have 9 of these radio buttons, and I'd have to select one particular one. So these are not, radio buttons are not a good way of doing this. It's much better to have a list box. So let's put a list box on, and we're going to put the list box on, and this is going to be used to show or give the user a list of the BTEC units from which they choose one. Now I've just taken a list box, I've drawn it on here. What I need to do is add a list of items to the list box. I right click on my mouse while I'm on the control, and I'm going to click edit items. I could have actually done it on the properties as well, but I'm going to do it from here, it's quicker. And let's just type in some sample units from BTEC. I'm just putting them in numerical order. Let's just put in 6. So I've got 6 in my list. As you can see, the list is shown. It's got this little control here, up and down arrows to control it. I know that if this displays to the user, they're going to see 2 units at a time. I just want to see 1. So what I'm going to do is change the font size for the units. So if I click on the control again, go over to the properties for the control, and I can see this one called font, and I'm just going to change the font size to 12 point. And now I've got a drop down list which is going to be the unit someone selects. Let's just put a label on top to make it a bit neater. Could be text, so let's call that BTEC units. Okay, so I've got BTEC units is the units we're going to select. What I also need is, so this is the units, and now I'm going to use radio buttons to allow the user to select a grade, pass, merit or distinction. So I'm going to drag on a radio button, line it up roughly underneath that. This time I should be able to click straight into the text, and I'm going to call that pass, and then we'll have another radio button for merit, and finally we'll have one also for distinction. So these radio buttons are going to allow the user to either select a pass or a merit or a distinction. They cannot select all three. That's the advantage of the radio button. And finally what we do is we put another list box, and I'm going to put this on the right hand side, and this will be to display an actual description. So this will describe for each unit that the user selects and each of the grades they select, it will put the description on this side. Let's just correct that. Unit details. So this would be a list box which would display a list of all the units that the teacher selected with their grades. And the final thing, I'm just going to put a text box to allow the student name to be entered, and let's put a label in front of it. We'll just call that student. Okay, at the moment I'm just keeping it very simple. I'm not naming any of the controls properly. I haven't gone to the properties and changed them. We're just using this as a demonstration of how these things will be. Add to report, and the idea of that is every time the user selects a unit and a grade, they click the add to report and it'll appear on this side as well. We haven't put the code in, so this isn't going to do anything, but let's just have a look at how the form looks. So we've got a text box where we can just put any text we want, and now we've got this list box which shows the list of units I typed in earlier, and the user can select one of these. So a list box is much better to use if you've got a long list of items. If you've got a short list of items you want someone to select, then the radio buttons can be quite good. So instead of I could have had a list box to show pass, merit and distinction like this, but this actually looks a lot cleaner here. And the final thing I had was a list box to list all of the units and grades selected, but we haven't put the code behind that, so it doesn't do anything at the moment.